Welcome to Professor Pincushion. In this tutorial, we're going to be making McCall's 6695. We're going to be focusing on view A, which is this dressing in this picture, but if you decide to do view B, you can also follow along most of the steps with us. The first thing that you want to check is to make sure you have the correct size, and the size is listed right here on the side of the envelope. You're just going to make sure that you find the grouping that has your size. Let's take a look at the dress that we're going to be making and see a quick example. Dress A is a lined one-shoulder dress with a lace or eyelet overlay. It has elastic around the neckline and waist, plus a side invisible zipper. This lovely party dress also has pockets and plenty of pleats to give it a flared skirt. Let's go ahead now and take a look at the back of the pattern envelope. If you're unsure of your size, you can always consult the body measurement chart located on the top flap of the pattern envelope. We can see it right here. It says body measurements. Now we have the measurements all listed here, and they're listed in inches, this top half here, not this bottom half. This is in centimeters. And you're going to see bust, waist, and hip. So what you're going to do is find your circumference of each of these areas, and you're going to line them up best you can in a column. So the number that's on top of that column that best suits you, that is going to be your size. So for me, my particular one, I'm going to line it all up and I'm going to end up being a size 12. So once you have this number, you're definitely going to remember it, because this is going to help decide not only what pattern we cut out, but also how much fabric we're going to need. Turning over to the back of the envelope, the first thing I like to look at is what is the suggested fabric for this dress. And then we have this box right here, and they're telling us what kind of fabric that they suggest that we use in order to make this garment. So first, it needs to be a medium weight woven fabrics, and you'll see here we have A, B, and then C and D. This is based on the view that you're doing. So if I'm doing dress A, I don't have to worry about what's under C and D. I just have to look here. So for A, B, they suggest that we use eyelet or lace, because this is going to have an overlay. Also with B, you would need a single edge scalloped lace because of the ruffle. And then you also see A and B here because this is in regards to the lining. So these are the fabrics they suggest that you use for lining the dress. Also, we have our notions. So A, B, C, and D, this means it doesn't matter what dress you're making, everybody's going to need a 12 to 14 inch invisible zipper. For an A and B, we also need elastic, and this is the width of the elastic, 3/8 of an inch, and you're going to need 2 3/8 yards of it. After we have our fabric, we can now figure out how much we're going to need. So you're going to look at the box that has your view. And remember, I'm doing A, so I'm only going to be looking for the A's. And I have it right here, 1, 2, 3. Now, for this particular dress, you're actually going to be utilizing 2 different lace overlays. So they have this one, which is going to be the main lace, and then you have a contrasting color, which is going to be the contrasting overlay. And then we have our lining down here. Now remember when I said you need to remember your size, this is when it's really going to come in handy. So if I'm doing size 12, everything below size 12 is going to relate to me. So for me, my fabric I'm picking out for my first lace overlay, my main fabric, depending on if you're doing 45 inch width fabric or 60 inch, then you're going to go into that row. So you need to look at your fabric width, which is on the end of your fabric bowl, and it'll tell you if it's 45 inches or 60 inches in width. Mine is 45, so I'm just going to go across this row until I hit the 12, and then it's going to tell me how much fabric I need out of my main lace overlay. Then I'm going to do the same thing for my contrasting color. So again, mine was 45 inches. I go across till I hit my size 12, and then I find out, okay, so I need, if I'm doing red and cream in my contrasting, out of my red lace, I'm going to need 1 3/4. Out of my cream lace, I'm going to need 1 1/8. Then we look to lining. Since I'm not doing B, I can skip B. And I'm going to go again. My lining fabric is 45 inches in width. Go across to my size, and I'm going to need 2 1/2 yards of my lining. Pull out your pattern directions, and at the top of page 1, you're going to see an illustration like this. So these are all the views that are contained within this envelope. We're going to be doing A, and this is the front and the back. And if we just look underneath this, you're going to see this diagram here. So these are all the pattern pieces that are located inside our envelope in order to make these dresses. If you look into each of these shapes, you're going to see a number. This is the pattern piece number. Underneath that, there are letters. If there are no letters, like with number 2, that means this piece is for all views. So it doesn't matter what dress you're making, you're going to be needing number 2 here. But you can see with number 1, it says A, B. So if you're doing view A or B, you're definitely going to need 1. Number 9, it says CD. So since I'm not doing C or D, I don't need to cut out piece number 9. 12 over here has AB and then CD. The line where AB sits, that is where you would cut for the AB dress because it's a shorter dress. But CD also uses piece 12. You're just going to cut on the second line down here because it's going to be a longer skirt on this dress. But if you're unsure, you can also look down here. This is a listing, and these numbers here correspond to the numbers that are listed in this pattern piece. And behind each pattern, again, you're going to have the letter. So usually what I do is I just make a little check next to it if it has my letter, which is going to be AB, or if it's like number 2 and it does not say, because again, that's for all views. So once you have the numbers that are going to be your pattern pieces, you're going to go ahead, pull out the tissue paper, and make sure that you cut out your correct pieces. Here's an example of one of the pattern pieces. So you remember I said all the pattern pieces had numbers? Well, this is our number right here, number 15. So if you needed to cut out number 15, this is how you know you're cutting out the right one. Also underneath it, you can see it has all the views listed. So it doesn't matter what dress you're going to need to cut out 15. And also it labels what exactly it is. This is the skirt left back. Now you need to make sure that you're cutting out the right size. And if you look over here, you see 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. These are the different sizes, and it has an arrow pointing up to the line that you need to cut out for your size. So if, for example, I'm doing size 10, I'm just going to follow this arrow up and I'm going to cut on this line right here and cut everything else off. Now if it's a solid line, like right here, and it doesn't have all these different options, that means it's for all sizes. So you're going to cut along that line no matter what. Now you'll see here I have a single notch and a double notch, and I cut outward for these to indicate that I have a notch here. So for the single notch, I just do a little triangle here, and then for my double notch, I do a bigger triangle and then I cut off the end. You can do it any way you want. You can cut inward if you want, or you can cut outward like me. I just do this because it's very important when we're matching our pieces together that we know where exactly our notches are. So this is very important. But once you have all your pattern pieces cut out, we can then start placing it on the fabric. When you're ready to start cutting out your fabric pieces, you're then going to want to reference the cutting layout, which we can see. This is this area right here, and they have this little guide right here. So if it's white, we're looking at the right side of the pattern piece, which you can see right here. This pattern piece is all white except for the number in the middle. That means that when it's laid down on the table, the printed side is facing up towards you. So if it's polka dot, it's the wrong side of the pattern, so that means the pattern is flipped down towards the table. Now solid means that we're looking at the right side of the fabric, and then white is going to be the wrong side of the fabric. So right here, all we're doing is looking at the right side of the fabric, and the pattern pieces are all faced right side up. You're going to make sure that you're looking at the right view. Again, here's dress A, B. So if we're doing one of these, then these are the layouts that we're going to use. Now you'll notice for this one, now this is for the main lace fabric. We have this setup and this setup all in the same box. The difference is this is for 45-inch width and this is for 60-inch width. So depending on the width of the fabric, this is the map that you're going to use. So if I'm using 45, I'm going to look at this, and I can ignore this right here. So out of my main lace fabric, I need to cut out pattern piece 12, 1, 14, and 3. Now what you do need to make sure is that you open up the fabric. It says salvage, salvage. That's going to be the end of the fabric and end of the fabric. So it's all laid out, one single layer. It's not folded, and you're cutting out each piece one time. You only need one of each. So I lay it up in a manner just like this, and then I pin my pattern piece all the way around so that the pins are parallel with the edge of the pattern, and then you can go ahead and cut out your pieces of your main lace fabric. Now if I just move this down just over here, Now this is contrast A. So this is going to be the contrasting lace. So for this one, if I'm using my red lace, this one I'm going to be using my cream lace. So you have a similar type of setup, 45, 60, but then you see 60 again down here. The difference is the sizes. So if you're doing size 8 through 18, you're going to have this kind of a setup. And if you're doing 20 to 24, then you would be using this. But I'm doing 45, so again, I'm going to be looking at this, and I'm going to be cutting out of my contrasting lace 15, 13, 4, and 2. And again, the fabric is single layer, opened up, no folds. I'm laying out all my pieces with the print side facing up, so everything's right side up, and go ahead and cut those out. And then lastly, our lining. So the lining for A and B. And for this one, there's a lot because we're basically cutting everything out again. So you're going to have to remove your pattern pieces that you cut out from your lace because you're going to have to redo them and cut them out of the lining fabric. And you can see all of them are listed here, and it's also listed up here. So they have 45, 45, and again, the difference is the size. So this is 8 through 12, and this is sizes 14 through 24. Now there are some additions here, which you can see 5 and 8, and also 16. Now 16 is the pockets. We need 4 pieces out of this one pattern piece. And you can see here is white and here is dotted. So what they want you to do is you cut out piece 16, then you flip it over and cut out the mirror of 16. And again, it's not folded, the fabric's not folded, it's just lying single layer flat. And you're going to go ahead, cut out 16 twice, and then cut it out again. So you end up with 4 16s. Before you remove your pattern pieces from your fabric, the very last thing we need to do before we start sewing this is we need to transfer the marks from our pattern to our fabric. So you can see I have circles, I have dots, I have pleats on this particular pattern piece. Now, if your lace has a delicate design which makes it difficult to mark, you can go ahead and make all your marks on the lining instead of the lace. It's either or. You don't have to do the lining and the lace. You can do the lace or you can do the lining, whatever is going to be easier for you. So all I have to do is I have to find the marks that have my size next to it. So you can see 8, 10, 12, 14. So I would just have to do 12. Now we're going to pretend like this is still pinned to my fabric. I'm going to take a straight pin. I'm going to put it through the number 12 mark that I need to do, and make sure that I'm going through all my fabric layers as well. Then on the wrong side of my fabric, all I'm going to do with my chalk or my pen, I'm just going to mark where my straight pin is coming out of the fabric. So I'd also do it over here. Now if you have a circle, square, triangle that does not have any number next to it, that means it's for all sizes. The same thing with the pleats. We have quite a few pleats in this design, so you're definitely going to want to make sure that you mark these on your fabric as well. Just a quick overview on the directions. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be reading the written directions, and there's a picture below to help kind of explain it, but then we're also going to demonstrate what exactly we need to do for each step. In order to read this, you're going to see over here we have a sewing information fabric key. So again, this is just like when we were doing the layout. Solid means we're looking at the right side of the fabric. White means we're looking at the wrong side. We don't really have to worry about interfacing in this project, but we do have lining. So we have right side of lining, wrong side of lining. So this is what makes it easy in looking in these pictures here. For example, in this picture here, I know I'm looking at the wrong side of the lining or the inside of the garment because I can just look at this and it helps interpret it for me. Also very important is you're going to want to know what the seam allowance is. And it's right down here, 5/8 of an inch, unless they state something differently for each direction. But if it tells you to do a seam and it doesn't say anything in particular, you're always going to assume it's 5/8 of an inch. You're also going to want to make sure that you're doing the directions for your view. If we look here at the top, this says, okay, we're starting with 1, we're doing the bodice for views A and B. So if you're doing dress C and D, you're going to have to continue looking down in the directions until you find your view. And also sometimes in the directions, they will split off. Like if I go over here, for 10, it says view A. So if you're doing view B, you would go ahead and skip this step. So we're going to go ahead and get started with making our dress. Step 1. Working on a flat surface, pin right side of bodice lining sections to wrong side of each matching bodice fabric section. Baste through all symbols and all lines of construction as shown, leaving both ends of thread free for easy removal. We're going to be now working with the bodice pieces. So that's piece 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to show you how to do this on 2 just as an example, but you're going to be doing the same thing for all 4 pieces. I like to keep my pieces pinned to my pattern until I'm ready to use it so I can keep everything straight. Now here I have my lace overlay, or you may be using eyelet, and then you have your lining. These are both number 2 pieces. I have one of each. So all they want you to do is you're going to take for each bodice piece, you're going to lay your lace right side facing up. So this is the right side and this is the wrong side. And this is the right side of my lining. So with your overlay piece facing right side facing up towards you, you're going to lay it over the right side of the lining. So you just have to think of it as you're looking at the right side of the lace with the right side of the lining peeking through the lace. Then I'm just going to pin all the way around the perimeter. Use my straight pins, make sure everything's lined up. Then what they want you to do is baste all the way around the perimeter of the whole piece, because we want to attach the lining to our overlay, and that way we're able to work with it and everything is attached. The thing that you have to do is you're sewing each side separately. So when you're basting, you're starting here, stitching at the 5/8 inch line is fine. Then you stop here, you cut your threads, now you're going to do the other side. So you're going to start here, you're going to stitch, stop, cut your basting threads. Then you're going to do the same thing here, here, and then here. So again, it's going to be sewn all the way around, but you're going to do each side separately, cutting the threads in between. But you also have to make sure that you're stitching through the pleat lines as well. So you can see I transferred my marks here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to start here and I'm going to baste straight through my marks for my pleats. And then I have another set right here. So then I'm going to do the same thing right here. So you're going to have pieces that are not only going to be stitched all the way around, but where you have your pleats either down here at the bottom of the bodice, or maybe it might be up here at the shoulder, you're going to have straight basting lines like this. When I'm doing a basting stitch, I'm going to actually use the largest stitch on my machine. And because this is a temporary stitch that is eventually going to be removed, you don't have to do any back stitching. And I'm also using a contrasting thread, so it'll be easy to see and therefore easier to remove. Step 2, pin bodice right front to bodice left front. Stitch trim seam to a scant 1/4 inch. We're going to be working with pieces 1 and 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove my pattern pieces. Now you'll notice on 2, on this long edge here, you have a single notch here. And on this curve here of number 2, we also have a single notch. These notches should match. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it so it's going to be right side to right side. So lace or eyelet together. Now you'll notice this kind of curves and it doesn't exactly line up with this edge. That is fine. All we're going to do is kind of force it to fit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to match up the notches. Go ahead and stick a straight pin through all layers. And then I'm going to go ahead and take this corner, meet it with the other corner. And do the same thing down here. And then the area in the middle, I'm just going to fill in with pins and kind of ease the 2 pieces together. And then we're going to take it to our machine so we can go ahead and stitch a 5/8 inch seam allowance. When sewing your seam, do your best to keep your basting threads out of the way. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I do a back stitch at the top and at the end. Just doing a regular width stitch and just sewing at the 5/8 inch mark. To finish step 2, the last thing we need to do is trim our seam allowance. So here's the seam that we just created, and I've already went ahead and did it. And all you do is just cut down that seam allowance so there's only 1/4 inch left to it. Step 3, with raw and size together, crease along seam encasing raw edges. Stitch along stitching line. So again, we're going to be working with this piece, and this is why we actually trimmed our seam allowance, because what we're going to do is I'm going to take this number 2 piece, which is the smaller, and I'm going to flip it so now it's underneath number 1 here. And right where you have this seam line, we're actually going to fold it. So the seam line is going to be right on the edge. And just to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and pin through just to hold it. And I'm going to do this all along the whole seam line here. And what we're going to do is now we're going to take it back to our machine and we're going to stitch right on top. And if you looked at our pattern piece, number 1, we'll say, it's also a number 2 as well. You'll see stitching line, and there's this line that goes from the bottom to the top here. This should be transferred to your fabric piece. And it's a little hard to see, but you can kind of see it right here. If I flipped it over to the side, you can definitely see it on this side right here. So that is going to be the line that we're going to stitch on as we're doing it. So I'm going to take it to my machine, stitch along the stitching line. This is going to fully enclose that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So if I was to open this up after it's stitched, you can see my seam allowance here. But after that part is stitched, that part is going to be totally enclosed and we're not going to see this raw edge anymore. At this view, you can see my line is a little bit easier to see. So that's the line I'm going to follow. And you can go ahead and do a couple of back stitches, and you're just going to do a regular width stitch and go all the way down to the end and then do another back stitch. Step 4, to make pleats and bodice front, on outside crease along lines of small circles, bring creases to lines of large circles, baste across raw edges, press. So now we're going to be creating our pleats, and I'm going to show you how to do it on the pattern because it's a little bit easier to see what's going on here. So here are our pleat lines here, and of course you only needed to transfer the ones that have your size. So I can go ahead and skip this and just do this circle, this dot, and I definitely put a smaller circle here on my fabric and then a larger here because that's going to be important later. And then if you look up here, you see another 12, and then we have another 12 up here. And the same thing for these and these. So it looks overwhelming, but you only need to do 4 on each set. So here, here, and then here and here. So what you're going to do is, wherever you have your small circles, I'm just going to show you in the middle here, you're going to crease your fabric right along where the small circles are. And it's nice because they put these little handy arrows for us as well. And all you're going to do is you're going to take this crease and you're going to bring it to the large circles. And once it's over there, you're going to grab a straight pin, you're going to pin through all layers, and then I'm going to do the same thing here and here. I'm going to go ahead and grab my fabric of this so I can show you that I've already started. And you can see I started to pin it. Now the last one, now this is why it was nice that you basted through your pleat lines, because it really makes it easy to see in what you're going to be doing for this part. So this one here is actually this one over here. These set of circles should actually be right on your crease from this last step that we just did. Remember we did this top stitch? Right on this crease where these two colors meet, that's where you have your last set of lines. So you're bringing this crease over to that last set of big circles, and then you're going to pin it through all those layers. And then you're just going to go ahead, take it to your machine. You can go ahead and baste straight across right on that 5/8 line, and then you can press it. So we're going to have a nice crease right where your pleats are. Step 5, pin bodice right back to bodice left back, stitch trim seam to scant 1/4 inch. So we've already done this before. We're just going to be doing it for our back pieces now. So this is the back bodice. It's going to be pieces 3 and 4. And all you're going to do is just like before, you'll see that one long side of 3 has a double notch, same as with 4. On this curve here, we have a double notch here. So these need to be matching. Go ahead and remove my pattern pieces. Right side facing up, I'm just going to flip this one so these edges now match. The right sides are now together, and I can go ahead, pin the notches, pin the edges, and then pin all in between so everything is lined up and matching with the raw edges. You're going to go ahead, stitch your 5/8 inch seam allowance, and then just like before, you're going to go ahead and trim it so you're only leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance left. Step 6, with raw and sides together, crease along seam encasing raw edges, stitch along stitching line. You're going to take piece number 4, you're going to flip it so it's underneath piece number 3 here. And then you're going to fold right on that seam line. So the seam line ends up right on the crease. You're going to go ahead and pin these 2 pieces together. And then you're going to stitch right on that stitching line again. Step 7, make pleats and bodice back based across raw edges. So we're going to be making our pleats again. You're going to crease along the small dots or small circles and bring that to the large circles. And you have 3 sets of pleats. Grab my straight pins here. Pin through all layers. So I've done one here, here's my second one, and again there's going to be one that's going to be right in this crease, and that's going to go to my last set of large dots, and then you're just going to baste across the raw edges, basting down your pleats, and you're going to press it. Step 8, stitch bodice front and bodice back together at shoulder, finish raw edges of seam allowances. This is the front, right side facing up. Now I'm going to grab my back bodice and I'm going to place them so they're going to be right side to right side. And what we're going to be doing is matching the shoulder, which is up here at the top. We have a single notch and a single notch. So I want to make sure that those are lined up. And then also the ends here. And you're going to go ahead, stitch your 5/8 inch seam allowance, press your seams open, and then we'll talk about finishing the raw edges after that's done. Here's my seam pressed open. Now to finish the raw edges, you have a couple of different options. First, what you need to do is stitch 1/4 inch on each side away from the raw edge. So here's the raw edge. I go 1/4 inch in, and then I just do a regular stitch. And I'm not stitching this to this part. It's just by itself, one layer. I'm doing this side, and then I'm doing this side over here. Now for the raw edge, if you have a serger, you can do a serging stitch. You can do an overcast or a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine, or you can just cut it with your pinking shears, which you can see I've done over here. Step 9, stitch bodice front and bodice back together at right side in double stitch seam. Press toward back. Stitch bodice front and bodice back together at left side, leaving opening below large circle. Clip 1/4 inch above large circle. Stitch again 1/4 inch away in seam allowance to clip. Trim close to second stitching. Press seam toward back. So I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to take the first part and then we'll do the second part. So we'll just take it a little bit at a time. So here is our bodice. The back is now attached to the front at the shoulder seam up there, which we can't see right now. We're going to actually be dealing with the side seams of the bodice now. So we have one over here and then we have one over here. We're actually going to be dealing with the side that has the double notches. So you can see over here is a double notch. I have a double notch over here. This side doesn't have any notches. So you're going to be dealing with this side. And all you're going to be doing is bring both the front and back bodice together at this edge. Go ahead and match the notches and all the raw edges and the ends here. You're just going to pin and you're going to stitch your 5/8 inch seam allowance, just your regular stitch. Don't forget to do your back stitches on both sides. Then you're going to do another stitch. You're just going to move up 1/4 of an inch, so that's going to be your 3/8 line. So 5/8 line and 3/8 line, and you're going to do another stitch, regular stitch, back stitch on both sides. Then all you're going to do is just take your seam allowance and you're going to trim it so it's close to that second stitch at the 3/8 line. Once you finish doing those 2 stitches and trimming your seam allowance, you can go ahead, take your seam allowance, and you're going to press it towards the back bodice. Now if you look up here at the top, you'll see a single notch. This one doesn't have any notches. The one with the single notch, this one right here, this is the front of the bodice, this is the back of the bodice. So I take my seam allowance and press it towards the back. After that, we can move on to the other side seam. So this is the side that has no notches on it, and you're going to line it up just like we did with the other side. The front is lined up with the back, right side to right side. And you can go ahead and pin it, but the only thing is we're only stitching, you'll notice there's a circle on your pattern which should have been transferred to your fabric. So you're only stitching from the top to the circle at your 5/8 inch line. So I've already went ahead and did that, and everything below the circle stays open. So you're not going to stitch that because we're going to end up putting a zipper here. So I'm just going to turn this around so it's a little bit easier for me to get to. After you stitch it, 1/4 of an inch above your circle here, so about right there, you're going to clip an inverted notch. And you're not going to clip into your seam, you're just going to clip just about to it. Like that. Then you're going to go ahead and start here at the top, and you're going to stitch another line. So this is going to be a 1/4 inch in, so you have one at the 5/8, so again you're going to go to the 3/8 line and you're going to stitch until you get to your notch, and then you're going to stop. Don't forget to back stitch. And then you're going to take this area, and just like with the other one, you're going to press it to the back. Moving on to step 10, stitch ends of neck casing together. So now we're going to be dealing with piece number 5. This is the neck casing. And I'm going to go ahead and remove this. Just make sure that you transferred any marks. We have squares here and we have a triangle here. These get transferred to your fabric piece before you remove your pattern. And I have it right side facing up. I'm going to go ahead and take one end, and this is a very long piece, bring it to the other end. So the right sides are together. Match up the edges here, and you can go ahead and pin them and then stitch a 5/8 inch seam and press your seam allowance open. Step 11, with wrong sides together, fold neck casing along roll line, pin edges, press lightly. Here is my casing, so this is piece number 5, and here's my seam allowance I just created. This is the wrong side that we're looking at. So the next step is you're going to take one edge and bring it over to the other edge. So the wrong side is on the inside. Just folding it directly in half. And the right side is on the outside. Grab some straight pins. And you can go ahead and pin all along the raw edge and go all the way around the whole casing. After you finish pinning this, you can go ahead and press the top so we can get a slight crease up here at the fold line. Step 12, pin casing to neck edge, stitch, trim. You're going to take your casing and you're going to pin it around the neckline here. Now, if you look at your casing, you'll actually see we have a single notch here. This matches up with the single notch on the front of the bodice. You're going to want to make sure that the raw edge of the casing lines up with the raw edge of the neckline. So I'm going to go ahead and pin that into place. Next, what I have is a triangle. I actually have a triangle right here at my shoulder seam. So that is going to match. Go ahead and pin that into place. And then I also have a square. The square is going to match the side seam here at the end of the neckline. And then after all those areas are pinned, you can go ahead and pin the rest of the neckline going all the way around here. You're then going to stitch a 5/8 inch seam allowance attaching the casing to the neckline, and then you can go ahead and trim down that seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead, pin this, stitch it, and then trim it. Step 13, turn casing inside along seam, press stitch as shown, leaving an opening. This is my bodice. It's wrong side out now. Here's the right side, and this is the casing that we just stitched along the neckline, and I went ahead and trimmed my seam allowance. The next step is you're going to take your casing and you're going to flip it over to the inside of the bodice. So this seam line between your outside, so my lace and my casing, is going to be right on the fold. See, the seam line is right on the fold there. And all of the casing is on the inside of the bodice. You can go ahead and pin all the way around the casing, and you're going to press it once it's all pinned. After it's pressed, the next step is you're going to come along and you're going to stitch right on this bottom fold line of the casing, and you're going to go all the way around. So it's stitched then to the bodice, but you're going to leave an opening because we need to get our elastic inside the casing so we have a nice snug top. So to do that, I'm just going to pin part of this here. Let's pretend that I pinned the whole thing. I'm going to make sure that I leave an opening about a couple inches in length. So at one point, and it doesn't matter where along the neckline you put it, I'm going to put a set of X's with my pins, and then a couple inches away, I'm going to do another set. So then the rest of this was all pinned, and I was ready to go ahead and stitch my casing down. Remember, we're stitching right along this bottom fold line of the casing. I could start here, stitch all the way around, don't forget to backstitch, and then I would stop here and then backstitch again. So between these two pins, there's no stitching, it's going to be open, so we can go ahead and put in that elastic. Here's a little closer view of the casing on the inside. So I'm starting at one of my X's here. And it's important that you get as close to the fold line as you can. If you end up cutting too far in, you might have a problem later when you're trying to get the elastic through. So I made sure to backstitch, and then I'm just going to go around until I get to the other X and then do another backstitch. Step 14, cut elastic the length of guide for elastic, insert elastic through opening, lap ends, hold with safety pin, try on, adjust if necessary, stitch ends of elastic securely, stitch opening, stretching elastic while stitching. You're going to use piece 17 as an elastic guide. So this piece is going to tell you how long to cut your elastic, which I've already done right here. So once you have your elastic cut, go ahead and bring in our bodice. Here you can see my opening. And what I'm going to do is insert the elastic now into the casing. You're going to need a small safety pin for this. Take your safety pin, put it on the edge of your elastic. So this will give us something that we can hold on to as it's moving through the casing. It just makes it a lot easier. So the safety pin side goes in first, and then I'm just going to gather the fabric or the casing onto the safety pin, and then with this hand I'm going to pull, and I'm going to keep doing that until the elastic comes out on this other side here. When you have both ends of the elastic, you can go ahead, remove the safety pin. You're going to overlap the ends about a 1/2 inch or so. And then I'm going to put the safety pin through both ends of the elastic. At this point, you can go ahead and try on the bodice and see how the elastic fits. If necessary, you can always cut down the elastic if it feels like it's too loose and you want to make it tighter. If you need to make it longer, then you'll probably have to cut a new piece of elastic. So once it feels good, you can go ahead and remove the safety pin and replace it with a straight pin and stitch across from one end to the other of the elastic. And I would go back and forth a couple of times and then move over about 1/4 of an inch and do another set of stitches, making sure that you go through both ends of the elastic here so it's nice and secure and it's not going to come undone. Then you could go ahead, stretch your elastic so it goes inside the casing, not with the safety pin. Obviously now it's stitched. And as you're pulling it, you can go ahead and stitch the casing closed where you have this opening, going ahead and stitching right along that fold line. We're now going to skip to step 23 because the steps before that deal with view B. So step 23, we're now going to work on the armhole. Stay stitch armhole edge. So here is the armhole of my bodice, and we only have one in this particular case. All you need to do is from the edge, you're going to go in 1/2 inch and you're going to stitch around the whole armhole, just a regular stitch 1/2 inch in. Step 24, stitch ends of armhole binding together. So we're going to need piece 8. You only have one of this. It's cut out of my lining. Right side is facing up. I'm going to bring the short ends together. So the right sides are together. And then on this end, you're just going to stitch a 5/8 inch seam allowance and press it open. Step 25, with wrong sides together, fold binding along roll line, press lightly, pin raw edges together. So here's our binding, and this is the seam allowance we just did. So just like you did before, you're going to fold the whole thing in half. And you're going to make sure that the right side of the fabric's on the outside and the wrong side is here on the inside. With it folded in half, you can go ahead and press the folded edge, then grab your straight pins and pin the raw edges together all the way around the binding. Step 26, pin binding to armhole edge, placing large circle at shoulder seam, stitch, stretching binding to fit, trim seam to a scant 1/4 inch, press seam toward binding. Here is my armhole binding again. And you'll notice here I have a single notch, I have my seam, and I have a double notch over here. We also have a large circle. So all they want you to do is fit the binding over your armhole on the right side of the garment. You're going to be matching the edge of your binding to the edge of the armhole. So here we have the single notch. This large circle at the top is going to match the shoulder seam up here. And then the seam in the binding is going to match the side seam of the bodice. So just line that up. And then the double notch is the back of the bodice, and that's going to match the double notch of your binding. So we're going to stitch this into place. You could go ahead and do it at the 5/8 inch mark. And you may have to stretch the binding a little bit as you're sewing it in order to get it to fit the armhole. But definitely pin all the way around before you start stitching it so you can try to ease it all into place. And then after you stitch it, go ahead, you're going to trim your seam allowance so there's only 1/4 of an inch left. Then I would press out your binding away from the garment, making sure that what's left of your seam allowance ends up underneath the binding. So if I was to flip this over, I would see the seam allowance on the binding side and not on the bodice side. Step 27, turn binding to inside over seam. Baste in place, stretching binding to fit, stitch close to basted edge. Here's the binding that we just attached. You can see I trimmed my seam allowance. And this is, we're looking at the inside of the garment. So I flip the garment wrong side out, and just like we did with the neckline, you're then going to take your binding, you're going to flip it to the inside of the garment, and you're going to make sure that the seam between the binding and the outer shell, so the lace in this case, this seam right here is going to end up right on that fold. You can kind of see my basting stitches right there in the middle. I'm going to pin it all into place all the way around the whole armhole. And then what you can do is you can baste the binding to the garment, And I would probably baste close to this edge. So it's going to be basted into place, and then you're going to go ahead and stitch as close to the folded edge as possible, and then the binding will be attached to the armhole. Steps 28 through 46 are for views C and D, so we're going to skip to step 47. Working on a flat surface, pin right side of skirt lining sections to wrong side of each matching skirt fabric section. Baste through all symbols and all lines of construction as shown, leaving both ends of thread free for easy removal. Sew invisibly 1.5 inches above lower edge, baste 1/4 inch from the raw edges. We're now going to be working with the skirt sections. So this is going to be pieces 12, 13, 14, and 15. I'm going to show an example on how to do this with piece 13, but you're going to do the same for all of them. Just like we did with the bodice sections, you're going to take your lace or eyelet overlay pieces and you're going to lay them on top of the matching lining pieces. So remember, right side of lining is facing up, right side of lace is facing up, and they're going to be laid right on top of each other. So you're looking at the right side, and the right side of the lining is coming through the lace. You're going to pin all the way around the perimeter of each of these pieces, so everything is matching with the notches and also with the edges. Then, just like we did before, you're going to want to baste the edges of each of your pieces. So we're basting the sides, the top, and here's the other side, making sure to do each separately. You're going to baste here, you're going to cut your threads, you're going to do this section separately, and you're going to do this section separately. You also want to do all your pleat lines. So wherever you have a mark, you're going to stitch right down to the bottom of this bottom mark here. And I'm going to do this for each of these. The bottom part of the skirt, so this is the part of the skirt that has the slow curve, we're going to leave this alone until we've done all these other sides. So don't stitch down here. This is actually a separate step on step 47, which is to sew invisibly across the bottom hem area 1.5 inches from the bottom. And I'm going to show you how to do that next, so we'll explain it. And then you're going to do a 1/4 inch basting stitch after you do the sew invisibly part. To start with this part, the first thing you're going to do is I grab my sewing gauge and my fabric marker, and 1.5 inches from this bottom, I'm going to go ahead and make a mark all the way, and I'm going to do this for each of my skirt portions. So then I have a line to kind of use as a guide. But we're going to get a little bit closer so I can show you how to sew invisibly across the bottom. To sew invisibly, I'm going to look at the wrong side of my skirt. So this is the lining side, and this is where I drew my line, my dotted line, 1.5 inches above the bottom of the skirt. I'm going to grab some thread and my sewing needle, and for this one I'm picking a thread that actually matches instead of a contrasting one that I normally do for my basting stitches. What I'm going to do is grab just a little bit of the lining only, not the overlay, so not the lace in this case, because I'm just trying to get my knot in there on the lining side. Then I'm going to go up about 1/4 inch from where my thread is coming out of my fabric. This time I'm going down through both layers, so the lining and the lace, and then I'm going to come up just a little ways away from that. You want the stitch to be pretty small. I'm going to flip it over to the right side to make sure that I can see my needle and also see that it is grabbing a little bit of lace. We only want this stitch to be small because we don't really want it to show on the right hand side of the fabric. So once I pull that up, I again go about 1/4 inch, making sure that I'm following along with my dotted line here, going through both layers and then coming up. So I'm making a very small stitch. Again, I check to make sure I can see my needle, and it is grabbing some lace. Pull it through, and then just repeat. So 1/4 inch away, go through both layers, and then from that I'm doing another 1/4 inch away. And you're going to do this for the bottom of all your skirt pieces. So that's 12, 13, 14, and 15. Once you finish this on this bottom side right here, you can go ahead and do a basting stitch 1/4 inch away from the edge. Step 48, stitch skirt right front and skirt left front sections together in double stitch seam. Press seam to one side. We're going to need pieces 13 and pieces 12. Go ahead and remove our pattern pieces here. Right side is facing up. You'll see here I have a straight edge with a single notch, same thing over here. It's a straight edge and I have 2 single notches. This is kind of slanted and it has a double notch down here. This is the side seam. This is the center front seam, so we're going to need to put these 2 pieces together. I'm going to take 13, I'm going to flip it over onto 12 so the right sides are together. And I'm going to make sure that I line up the raw edge, the 2 notches, and the ends here. You can go ahead and pin these raw edges together, just this side right here, because we're going to stitch our 5/8 inch seam allowance, and then you're going to go up a quarter towards the seam allowance, so 5/8 and then 3/8. You're going to stitch another stitch at the 3/8 line, so you're going to have 2 rows of stitches. Then you can go ahead, trim your seam allowance, and press your seam toward one side. Step 49, to make pleats and skirt front on outside, crease along lines of small circles, bring creases to lines of large circles, baste across raw edges, press. We're going to be creating our pleats again, just like we did with our bodice. I've actually already started over on this side. I have one more line of large circles right here at the edge between the 2 sides of the skirts, and then I have one small set of dots over on this side. So we're actually going to cross over by creasing right at that basting line that I had put in earlier of the small dots coming over to the large dots on the red side here. And you're going to pin across the top through all layers to hold it. And then I have another one, crease along the small, bring it to the large, and pin it. You're going to baste across the raw edges. You can do it at the 5/8 line up here at the top, so you hold your pleats in place without the straight pins. And then you're going to go ahead, baste across here, and then you're going to press it. Now for all my pleats, I'm all going in this direction towards 12, except for this last pleat. It actually is the only one that goes in the opposite direction. So this line of small dots goes in this direction to the large dots. And that's it. Step 50, stitch skirt right back and skirt left back sections together in a double stitch seam. Press seam to one side. We're going to be working with the skirt back now. So this is piece 14 and piece 15. I have the right side facing up. And again, just like we did for the front, you have a straight edge. This time we have a single notch on each one. So these ones are going to match together. I'm going to take this piece, match up the raw edge. So the ends are going to match, the notches are going to match. Go ahead, you're going to pin your raw edge. You're going to do the 2 sets of stitches. So 5/8, 3/8, trim your seam, and then press the seam towards one side. Step 51, make pleats and skirt back, baste across raw edges, press. So we're doing the last of our pleats in the skirt back. You can see I've already started here. Just the same thing we've already done for our other pleats. You crease along the small circles, bring them to the large circles, pin it, and then you're going to baste across the raw edges. So we hold our pleats in place. Step 52, pin one pocket section to skirt front at each side. Stitch pivoting across seam allowance at small circles, clip diagonally to small circles, turn pocket to inside and press. We're going to be working with the skirt front. So this is 12 and 13 that have been stitched together and the pleats are all done at the top. Next, you're going to take your pocket piece. So this is piece 16 cut out of your lining. And from this piece, you should have cut 4. We have 2 sets. You're just going to take one set, so that's 2 pieces that are opposite of each other. And on the front, you're going to place right side to right side, one pocket, matching up the edge here at the top and the notch here. And you're going to go ahead and pin this edge down. I'm going to take my other pocket and I'm going to put it on the other side of the skirt as well. But I'm just going to show you on this side. So you're going to go ahead and pin this all down, and you're going to stitch starting here at this small dot. There's a small dot that's on your pocket piece and also on your skirt. So you're going to start here at the raw edge. You're going to stitch down to the circle, then you're going to pivot and you're going to stitch across at your 5/8 inch line till you get to this other dot. Then you're going to pivot again and stitch up to the raw edge. After you finish stitching, you're going to go ahead and cut these notches. This is going to be on the inside of the box that we just stitched. So here's my stitching line right here, and then I pivot here. So this is right on the inside of this stitch, and I'm making sure that I cut pretty close to my dot, but not cutting into my stitches. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side and then on the other side as well where my pocket is. Then you're going to flip your pocket to the inside of the dress, or the wrong side of the dress, and you're going to press it, and I've already done it on this other side. So you kind of see this is what your pocket is going to look like on the right side of your garment. So this is where we started the box, where we pivoted to here and then to here. So it's going to kind of look like the square notched area in your skirt. Step 53, pin one remaining pocket section to each pocket, stitch outer edge in a double stitch seam, keeping skirt free. We have one more set of pocket pieces here, and you're going to take one and place it on each pocket. So you're just going to place it so all the edges of the pockets meet, and then also you'll notice there's a notch down here and that meets as well. What we're going to do is the double stitch. You can go ahead and pin this outer side to keep them all together, and you're not pinning it to your skirt, it's just the pockets by themselves. You're going to start stitching from here, going along the curve and ending here. So just this path here. You don't stitch here and you don't stitch here. You're going to do the 5/8 inch seam allowance, then the 3/8 inch seam allowance. So there's going to be 2 rows of stitches. Don't forget to back stitch on each side. And remember, you're not stitching it to the skirt, it's just the 2 pocket pieces together, and you're going to do it for this one and then the one on the other side. Step 54, turn pocket down, base side and upper edges. This is the right side of our skirt, and this is where we put in our pocket. So this is the first pocket we put in, and this is the second part of the pocket we just attached. All you're going to do is you're going to pin up here at the top where the start of your pocket is, going through all layers. And then you're also going to pin the side. Then you're going to baste here, the side. You can stop right here and then start again till you get to the end of the pocket, which is about right here. So then all your pocket pieces are going to be attached to the front of the skirt, and you're going to do it for this side and then for that side over there as well. Step 55, pin skirt front to skirt back at sides, stitch right side in a double stitch seam, being careful not to catch pocket opening in stitching. Stitch left side below large circle, clip 3/4 inch below large circle, stitch again 1/4 inch away in seam allowance to clip. Trim close to second stitching, press seam toward back. We're now going to attach our skirt back to our skirt front. This is my back. I have it right side facing up, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the skirt front and place it directly on the back. So the sides are going to line up because that's what we're going to attach next. On the right side, you're going to do your double stitch seam. So that's going to be stitching from the top to the bottom. You're going to do the 5/8 line and then the 3/8 line. And you're going to be really careful that we don't catch this part of the pocket that we just did, which is the pocket opening, or you're going to sew your pocket close. So this part where it was folded over from the pocket being stitched to the skirt, if you want, you can pin it forward a little bit and just get it out of the way, so you're only stitching this pocket piece and not this part. So again, 2 rows of stitches. Don't forget to back stitch on both sides. You can go ahead and trim close to the second stitch that you do, and then press your seam towards the back. And the skirt back is on the bottom, that's why I'm doing it under. On this side, let me just move it down so I can reach it a little bit easier. We're going to be putting in a zipper. You'll notice that you have a large circle on your skirt pieces. Everything above the circle needs to stay open because this is where we're going to put the second half of the zipper. From this circle, you're going to stitch down 5/8 of an inch. Then you're going to measure down from the circle 3/4 of an inch, and you're going to clip one of your little notches, being sure not to clip your stitches. Then from your notch, you're going to stitch down the 3/8 line, so 1/4 in from where you just did your last stitching. Then from there, you can go ahead, trim your seam allowance, and press it toward the back. Step 56, pin skirt to bodice, matching centers, stitch in double stitch seam. Here's my skirt inside out. I'm going to get my bodice here, and the bodice is right side out because what I'm going to do is stick, this is the shoulder, the top of the bodice into my skirt. So now the right sides are together. And remember, we have an opening here on the bodice, the bottom of the bodice, and then we have an opening at the top of our skirt. So this is the side that the zipper is going to go in. So I'm going to make sure that I match up these ends. Go ahead and start pinning this. I have a notch here in the front of my bodice and a notch in the front of my skirt. So I'm going to match up that as well. You're just basically going to pin all around the bottom of the bodice to the top of the skirt and make sure everything matches. So here's the other end of my bodice. It's going to go to the end on this other side. Once you have everything pinned, you can go ahead and do the double stitch, which again is the 5/8 and the 3/8 line. You're doing 2 rows of stitches, and you could just do a regular width stitch and do a back stitch. Starting here, go all the way around, ending here, do another back stitch. Step 57, cut elastic the length of guide for elastic, mark small circles. So we've already done this before. We're using the same piece, piece 17, our elastic guide, and you're going to cut a piece of elastic the length of the guide. Now you'll notice on the pattern piece there are circles. There's one here in the middle, and then there's some on the end. So you're going to want to make sure that you mark that on your elastic. Step 58, pin elastic along bodice seam allowance at waist, placing ends at seam lines on side opening edges and center small circle at right side seam. Stretch elastic evenly and pin to seam allowance at centers and sides. Stitch along center of elastic, stretching to fit, press seam toward bodice. You're going to take your elastic that you just cut, and this is the waistline of the dress. So this is the skirt, this is the bodice. We just stitched this together. Here is our seam allowance right here where we did the double stitch. Again, we have our opening here where we're going to put the zipper, and then the right seam is over here. We're looking at the front of the dress. You're going to take the end of your elastic and you're going to put it at this side seam here on the end of your opening. And you're going to pin it to the seam allowance only, not to the bodice, not to the skirt. Just pull it apart so it's all separate, and you're going to pin it at the end. Then the circle that we put in the middle of our elastic, this is going to go at the right side seam, again at the seam allowance. So I would pin it here, again to the seam allowance, just right in the middle of your seam allowance. Now you'll notice that this from here to here is longer than what the elastic is. So you're going to have to stretch the elastic to fit, and you're going to pin it all the way along the way. And this is going to continue onto the back of the dress until this end ends up with this end here in the back. So again, you're going to have to stretch your elastic, you're going to pin it to fit, and then we're going to get a little closer because what I'm going to do is after it's pinned, we're going to stitch right down the middle of that elastic to the seam allowance only in order to attach the elastic. And once the pins are out and we stitch it, what's going to happen is the elastic is going to cinch in the waistline of the dress. So we're going to go ahead and get a little closer so it'll be a little bit easier for you to see. I tucked my bodice back into my skirt so I can just sew on the seam allowance without having to worry about accidentally stitching something else. So I'm just stitching right down the middle of the elastic to the seam allowance, and even though I went ahead and pinned it, I'm still going to have to stretch the elastic as I'm sewing because you can see the fabric is already starting to gather and we want it to go on flat. So I'm just going to use a regular stitch. Don't forget to back stitch and just go right down the middle. Step 59, open zipper. On outside, pin zipper to front opening edge face down in seam allowance, placing upper zipper stop at large circle, zipper teeth on seam line, and tapering end. Position left hand groove of zipper foot over teeth, stitch close to teeth between large circles, keeping front opening edge of pocket free. We're going to be putting in our invisible zipper now into the side of our dress, and I have my dress right side out. So here's my invisible zipper, and you'll notice that one side is nice and flat, and then on the opposite side you can feel the teeth. This is the wrong side of the zipper. This flat side is the right side of the zipper. So the first thing you're going to do is open up your zipper. You're going to flip it so the right side of the zipper is facing down towards the dress. Now your zipper teeth on the right, so this one right here, is going to go on this side of the opening of your dress. You're going to position it so the zipper stop at the top should be right at your first circle up here. So you might have extra zipper tape. You can just stick that up there. So the stop is right at this large circle here. The teeth of the zipper should line up with your basting stitch that we did in step 1. That's why I did a contrasting thread, because it's really easy to see. So I'm just positioning my teeth right over that basting stitch. And all I'm going to do is pin all the way down the zipper till I get to my large circle down here, and that's where the end of my zipper is going to be. Now remember, we have our pocket here, so you're going to be careful that even though the teeth may line up with the edge of the pocket, we're not actually going to stitch this front pocket. It's instead going with this back pocket portion that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this on, and then we'll get to the machine where we get a little closer look at sewing it. You must use a special invisible zipper foot when putting in an invisible zipper. If you don't have one, you can get a universal invisible zipper kit at your fabric store. If you're unsure on how to use this foot, definitely check out our video, Invisible Zippers, and we'll show you how to use a foot just like this. So you can see that I have my teeth of the zipper in the left groove of the foot, and my needle is going to be going down into this hole right in the middle here. All I'm going to be doing is just stitching right next to this teeth, and that's what this foot helps me to do. So I'm just going to go all the way down using a regular stitch, and don't forget to back stitch on both ends. Step 60, close zipper, pin remaining zipper tape to back opening edge, placing zipper teeth on seam line, tapering upper end. Here's my zipper. Now my dress is inside out. The last time it was right side out. And I'm just going to zip up my zipper. We're still at the top. So now I'm going to take this side of the zipper, the one that's not stitched down, and I'm going to pin it to this side. So all I'm going to do is, I have my basting line again right at the seam line, and that's where the teeth needs to go, the middle of the zipper. So I'm just going to fold it so that's right on the edge or right on the fold, and then I'm going to bring my zipper over, and you just kind of have to lay it down and then check on it and see if the teeth are right in the middle, which they are right at that position. So I'll grab my straight pins and pin it into place all the way down. Step 61, open zipper, position right hand groove a zipper foot over teeth, stitch between large circles. So after you pin it, you can go ahead, open up your zipper, and then you're going to position the zipper teeth underneath this right groove, and you're just going to stitch along on the side until the zipper is attached. Step 62, close zipper, stitch or hand sew each end of zipper tape to seam allowances, keeping skirt free while stitching. My zipper is closed, so at the end, at the top and the bottom, all we're going to be doing is doing a couple of tacking stitches in order to hold the rest of the zipper tape down to our seam allowance. So I'm just doing the seam allowance only. I'm not stitching to the bodice or to the skirt. And I have my needle and thread here. And I'm just going to do a couple of stitches on each side. Now on the bottom of the zipper, you may not have been able to sew all the way down to the end of the zipper on your side seam because the zipper tab got in the way as you were stitching. So you may also have to do a couple of stitches along the side of the zipper at the bottom just in order to close up if you have any holes in the side seam, because we definitely don't want to have any holes. So I would just do the same thing that I'm doing now. You're just going to do few stitches just to hold it down, and I'm going to tie a knot and do this side, and then I'll also do the bottom. Alright, so it's the last step, step 63. Turn up hem, base close to fold, stitch 1/4 inch from raw edge using long stitches. Adjust fullness, shrink out with steam, finish raw edge, sew hem in place, press. We're now going to be working at the bottom of our skirt. We're going to hem it into place. So I'm looking at the inside of the skirt portion, and I'm going to take the raw edge, fold it to the inside or the raw side of the skirt, 1.5 inches. And you can go ahead and pin that into place. And you'll notice as you're pinning it, this top portion is not going to seem to fit as well as it should. It'll pucker a little bit, so we're going to be dealing with that. First thing what you're going to do is all along this bottom fold, you're going to baste with your machine all along the bottom of the skirt. Once you're done with that, you can remove your straight pins, lift up your raw edge 1/4 inch from the raw edge. You can go ahead and do a basting stitch. So you're either doing the longest stitch in your machine or you can do it by hand, and you're just doing it through the raw edge, not through going through the skirt portion. The reason why we're doing this is because if you don't do a back stitch and you have your long threads hanging off, you can pull the threads and that'll ease the top of the skirt so it'll fit better up here. You can also use steam from your iron in order to kind of shrink the top portion a little bit so it'll fit better. I'm going to go ahead, do the basting stitches, and then I'll show you how to finish the raw edge and also how to sew it into place. I finished doing my basting stitch on top. Now for me, I like to do portions of the skirt, which means I baste a portion, I cut my threads, and then I do the next portion. That way I'm not dealing with one string that I have to pull for the whole skirt. I only have to do a little bit at a time. So what I do is I grab one of my threads from my basting stitch, I pull on the fabric, and you'll see it'll start to gather, and then I take this gather and I kind of distribute it in the section that I'm working with. So we're not getting any wrinkles, it's just taking this fullness and it's kind of slowly just gathering it together. So once the fullness looks like it's going to fit for our skirt, we can start worrying about finishing the top. Now for their choices, again, it's the pinking shears, it's an overlock stitch. You can use your serger if you want to serge the top of it. For me, I'm just going to take the raw edge and I'm going to turn it under 1/4 inch. So then my basting line is going to be right on the fold line there. And it just gives me a really easy guideline, and then I have a nice fold on top. So I'm just going to fold it all the way around and go ahead and put in my pins, so then it's easy for me to go ahead and to start stitching that. To sew my hem into place, I'm going to be doing a blind hem, which is similar to what we did earlier when we sewed invisibly. So you're going to need to grab your needle and your thread, and what we have up here is our folded edge, and it doesn't matter if you have a folded edge or if you have a serged edge or an overlock edge, it's still going to be the same step. So this folded part is the part that we're going to grab first with our needle, and you should use a matching thread. I'm using a contrasting one, so hopefully it'll be a little bit easier for you to see. So I'm actually coming up, let me remove this pin, on the inside of the fold and coming up right on that fold, or right on the edge. That way my knot is going to be tucked on the inside. So if we looked on the inside of the skirt, you're not going to see my knot at all because it's tucked right in between there. Then I'm going to grab a little bit of the skirt. So you can see my needle right there. Just a little bit. And then I'm going to go back and grab a little bit of my folded edge right on the fold line. So if you do this right, you're not going to really see much of your stitches from this side. Like if I pull it here, you can see it, but if I lay it flat, you can't really see anything except for my basting stitches there. Then grab a little bit of the skirt fabric, and then we go back to the fold, back to the skirt, back to the fold. Now if I lift this to the right side, you can see my stitches right here. But obviously if I use a matching cream color thread, you're barely going to see anything. So that's why it's called a blind hem. So after you finish doing your hem, you can go ahead and press your whole hemline so then it's a nice crisp edge here and then up here as well if you also did the folded edge. After you finish the hem, the only thing left to do is then to remove any basting stitches or fabric markers, as there's quite a bit in this dress. This has been McCall's 6695 Dress A. We hope you enjoy your new party dress. Make sure to check out our other videos and visit ProfessorPincushion.com to view our complete library with well over 150 sewing video tutorials. New tutorials are released regularly, so make sure to subscribe to be notified of the next release. Thanks for watching!